Okay, on Sunday, June 26th, at about 12:35 a.m., the Smith County Sheriff's Office Emergency Operations Center received a call of multiple gunshot victims out off Old Highway 31, which is FM 2767, east of Tyler, almost to the Gray County line. It was supposed to be the scene of a concert and trail ride and ATV ride. Upon arriving to the location, they found out that several of the victims, I think all 5 of the victims, were sent to 4 different hospitals in Gregg and Smith County. The first gunshots allegedly occurred near the stage area of the event due to some argument. It was reported that they had security on scene that would take firearms away from the patrons as they come in and would supposedly give them back to them as they leave. Well, I've got some issues with that. Number one, the new constitutional carry does not cover anybody that is intoxicated. You cannot carry a gun while you're intoxicated. There's alcohol being served out there. They're intoxicated. How many convicted felons did we hand pistols back to? So we're going to investigate that part of it. We're going to investigate the organizer of the event, and we're going to also investigate the ones who fired shots. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Do y'all have any suspects for any of the shootings?
We don't have any suspects in custody at this time. We have some what we call persons of interest that will probably turn into suspects. We have just recently identified the organizer of the event, and I will say that we will be going after that organizer with both civil and criminal penalties.
Do we have any update on the victim that was shot in the face? Y'all said he was in critical condition.
I think it's critical condition still, but stable, if that makes sense. He hasn't decreased in any as far as his medical condition is concerned.
As for events like this that are kind of on a private property, are there any rules or specific security measures the organizer has to take, or?
Organizers in Smith County are required, especially if it's going to be a mass gathering, to get a permit. There was no permit, even though it's on private property. When they take money from people to come into the event, it's open to the public, it becomes a public event, whether it's on private property or not.
Have y'all had any problems on that property before?
Not to my knowledge, we haven't, Alan. As far as I know, that's the first time we've had trouble on that property. Now, we have had trouble in the area out there of a couple of different locations, but nothing to this magnitude.
Do y'all have an estimate on how many people were actually at the event?
Well, it's a good question if we know how many people were at the event. When we get there, the organizer's gone and the security's gone too. That gives you a clue. We also have questions as to whether or not a Louisiana security company can operate in the state of Texas. So we're going to be checking on those guidelines as well, and there could be potential charges filed there as well. Anywhere we can file charges on this event, they will be filed.
What about the person who owned the property?
Person who owned the property, allegedly the property is in a bunch of heirs, and as far as we know from people we've talked to so far, they did not have permission to use the property. But which they may have, they may not have. You know, you can.
There may have been one
right,
of 8 people.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
Have claims
Absolutely.
to the property.
What option do people attending an event like this have? Like, is it just go at your own risk, even though they said they had
Well,
security?
you know, I can look back at least 2 years from now, down to Mount Enterprise, 2 killed in Wascom here a few weeks ago. We started at Liberty City. We've had trail rides here off County Road here in Smith County. Everywhere you can follow, there's violence. And I know the average person attending that event, that's not their intent. But I would say to them, don't take your 13-year-old kids to an event like that and end up in one of the hospitals here shot in the face.
Was there a minor that was injured?
13-year-old is the one that was injured, shot in the face.
Sure, do you know why the shooting happened?
We don't know. It's like a bunch of, for lack of better terms, when you go in a room, this room here, if you have a bunch of roaches in here, you turn on the lights, they scatter. Same thing when gunshots go off like that, they scatter. And There's, there's different charges we'll be looking at, failure to stop and render aid, just anything, again, that we can file on the event holder or anyone else that they've broken the law in Smith County, it will be prosecuted.
Are they being cooperative with you, the event organizers?
We haven't even located them yet. The first thing, if it was an honest event, you would think they would stay there and talk to us, or at least would have contacted us by 2 p.m. on Monday afternoon. Crickets.
Were these trail ride events on y'all's radar before this event happened? I know you said they happened in other counties, but for Smith County?
Not this specific one. Normally, we see the flyers going around on the Facebook or something. Took us completely by surprise. It was out in a rural enough area that we didn't get complaints by neighbors as they were starting. That's usually what happens, is we get complaints by neighbors, and it keys us off that they're about to have one. And the one we've been having off of FM, I can't remember what the FM number is, out off of 1252. There's a lot of houses around there, and they've disturbed a lot of people, and we finally got that one stopped. But it took a lot to do it.
With 5 people shot, do we know how many possible shooters?
We really don't, because the first report I saw is they were shooting in the crowd, just shooting haphazardly in the crowd, a crowd of people, not at any specific person per se, which is also very dangerous.
So you said the security was gone by the time y'all got there, so y'all
Correct.
don't know if it was written that, or reported that the people ran back to security to retrieve arms.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious whether they gave them the arms or whether they took
It's my understanding they did give them the arms, and then another gunfight erupted as part of that. It just makes no sense to me. Any legitimate security company would think that it's okay to take firearms from people, number one, not knowing who they are, whether or not they're convicted felon, because when they give that gun back to them, if I put my ATF suit back on, I'm going to file on them for providing a firearm to a felon. Even though he had it to start with, he gave it to me, I gave it back, you better know who you're giving a firearm back to.
So they're just acting like it was a coke shop at a restaurant.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just it beats anything I've ever seen. The lack of forethought of organizing, if you want to call it organizing a disorganized event like this, I would call it.
Does the fire marshal's office have any involvement in this because it was an outdoor event, or it's strictly?
The fire marshal's office would have some say in it. They're the ones who deal with our permitting process. But when you have somebody that don't go through a permitting process, they've circumvented that. But we'll be working, obviously, with the fire marshal's office and the district attorney's office to file any civil lawsuit as well as any criminal enforcement.
With these different types of groups, because they all have ATVs and stuff like that together, and they call themselves groups, if a shooting like that happens, could there be any organized criminal activity charges involved?
There could be with the organizer of the main event. That's potential for that. In these events, I've seen, you see license plates from Louisiana and different states come into these events. They come up quite frequently from Houston area, and they come from all over, from Dallas, Fort Worth. They're big events, and I've seen more trouble from the events than I've seen anything good going on. It's not good family fun like you'd be going to the Gladewater Roundup Rodeo, you know.
Back to the number of people out there. I know y'all don't have an official count. Did any of the witnesses that did talk give an estimate on how many people might have?
They haven't, and I haven't talked directly to Sergeant Railsback, who's leading the investigation. I know they've gone to Marshall and tracked down some leads and things of that nature all the way through the weekend and even today. That's something we'll be looking at, and we'll also be asking people that we do interview. We know there's going to be footage, camera from their cell phones and everything where they're taking photographs, so we're going to be asking for all of that to put that together and kind of determine how many there was or whatever. But there's a lot of things that that potentially we're going to look at doing to ensure this doesn't happen in Smith County again.
Now, is there a specific plea you want to make to public for help?
Absolutely. As we put in our original press release, what we would love for anybody to do, anybody that participated, they're not in any trouble, if they would, to contact us at 903-566-6600. That's our non-emergency number to our dispatch. It's answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And tell them what you're calling about, and they will get you in touch with a detective that will either telephonically interview you or they'll come to your location and interview you.
We talked a little bit about one of the people, but do you have the updates on all 5 of the victims, the shooting victims?
The other 4 people that were in the hospital were treated and released, is what my understanding was. They were treated and released that same night. So the only one major injury, and that was to the 13-year-old.
Sure, these witnesses that you're gonna speak with, are they just witnesses or are they potential suspects?
Well, anybody, it starts out as a witness, and you know, if we see during the interview that they're a suspect, obviously we'll stop and we'll give them their Miranda warning, or either that or they'll be free to leave at any time they want to, one or the other. But we're not looking, what we're looking for is witnesses. I don't expect the suspects to come in. It would behoove them to do so, to come in and say, I did this, it was wrong, but this is what I did. It would help them if they would do that, but that hardly ever happens, especially in a situation like this. But most of the ones we're looking for are just 100% witnesses. They're just there to have a good time, watch the concert, ride their horses, ride their four-wheelers, and have fun. And then people like this come in and ruin it for everybody.
Were there any other like forms of videography, like if it was a concert, did they have people live streaming or anything?
We haven't contacted the organizer. I'm sure that's potentially they do. Normally they do, because that's how they advertise for later on, different events. So I'm sure there probably is.
Anything like that?
All right. Thank y'all.